For over 40 years, Bandai has been pushing the envelope in model kits. They are always striving for perfection when it comes to both scale and detail, and no line displays that better than the perfect grades. But, what is a perfect grade? For those of you that don't know, perfect grades are a kit line that produces 1/60th scale models that bring the most detail to a kit we've seen to this point. These are the second largest kits that Bandai has produced, only coming behind the Mega size, which comes in at a whopping 1/48th scale. While these kits certainly are large, they are definitely lacking in the detail department. As the name suggests, perfect grade Gunpla kits attempt to represent the Gundam as perfectly as possible within our own world. This obviously brings in limitations that result in lengthy waits between releases as the makers wait for new advances in the modeling world to develop. To date, there has only been 22 releases, not counting the P Bandai, of course, in the perfect grade line, with each of them being well worth the wait as there have been some significant improvements made between some of the iterations. But to understand the true strides that this kit line has made over the years, we have to look at the origins of the perfect grade. The first PG Gundam was released back in November of 1998 with the perfect grade RX-78-2. For reference, I was released in June of '98, making me 5 months older. It featured LEDs for the eyes, which required a watch battery not included, a transformable core fighter as well as optional core blocks, and a multitude of opening panels and hatches. This was clearly the start of something big, except, well, it wasn't actually the start. This was actually the second kit to be released in the PG line, with the first one not actually being from the Gundam world at all. No, the very first perfect grade was actually the PG Evangelion Unit 01 kit, which was released back in '97. Now, I can't find any reviews online from buyers back in '97, but from every Reddit forum that I looked at, this kit is a bit of a nightmare to say the least. There are the obvious reasons, like it being the first model kit from Bandai of this size and scale and detail, but the real problem was with its design flaws. The Eva consisted of an inner frame similar to what we see now in the SDCS lines, which back then was pretty darn cool, except you then had to cover that inner frame with a rubber suit. This left builders frustrated both at the challenge of stretching this rigid rubber suit over the plastic and at the lack of posability once it was on.
There is nothing about this process that is fun, enjoyable, or that makes any discernible amount of sense.
It wasn't all bad though with this new kit line, as it did bring pretty incredible details and gimmicks to the kit that we still see today. In my opinion, the coolest has to be the lighting in it, as well as the actual energy source for the lights. It comes with a AA battery powered LED set that can actually be plugged into the back of the Eva. It's a really cool addition that honestly I wish would have been continued through the PG line. While they didn't stick with the external battery power, they did however stick with LED lights, as it would become a staple of the PG line. After the initial release of the PG Eva and PG RX-78, Bandai would go on to make 10 more PGs from 1999 to 2005, all of which tried to make improvements on the initial releases. This includes the Zaku and Char Zaku, which to this day are the only mass-produced unit to receive its own perfect grade. Fingers crossed that they add the Zagok, please, Bandai, I am begging you. Then the Zeta Gundam, which included die-cast metal parts and wing binders. The W Gundam Zero, which was the first and only PG released from the After Colony timeline. They then released the Mark II in both AEUG and Titans colors. The GP01, which allowed builders to build both versions. And the Strike, which coincided with the release of the second batch of Gundam Evolve. Bandai then ended their PG release spree with the release of the Sky Grasper, an add-on for the Strike, and then a joint Ale Strike Rouge and Sky Grasper full set. This capped off an impressive 8-year period where 12 separate perfect grade kits were released. If this were the norm for these kits, that means that in this year, 2024, there would be over 35 separate PG releases, but as we know, they have released far less than that. After that 2005 release of the Ale Strike Rouge, we would have to wait 4 years for the next release. Now, there are a couple of different reasons for this hiatus. Number one, the perfect grade line was made to be the pinnacle of model kits, something that was innovative with every release. This is something that Bandai would do with the first couple of perfect grades, as there are massive strides made from the first PG that we saw. From getting rid of the strange rubber covering to improving upon the metal screws used to change positions in the original PG RX-78, as well as adding customization options in the later releases. Something that was very evident with the PG burner, as it included a multitude of additional pieces for transformation. I mean, just look at this thing. Oh my goodness, it's heavy. It's absolutely huge. From their first attempt all the way up to their 12th, they continued to build out the line, but with them releasing almost 2 a year, they quickly reached the best kit that they could produce with the technology that they currently had. The second reason they took a break was because of the price it took to produce these perfect grade kits. Think of any random high grade. For comparison, I'll just choose the RX-78. This kit has 48 total pieces that are spread across 4 different runners, which is relatively standard for most high grades. The PG RX-78 is a different story, as it nearly has 700 different parts located on 24 separate runners, not to mention that multiple parts are individually bagged. That means that this PG has more than 14 times the pieces as this high grade. And something to remember about this high grade is that the pieces from this kit as well as polycap runners can be interchanged and reused for a multitude of kits. These PG pieces can't, as there's only a few kits in the line that come in the 1/60th scale. Mix that in with the fact that these PG kits sell far less units than these HG kits, and you really start to see the problem that Bandai was facing with pumping out these kits. Fast forward to 4 years later, and Bandai would try again with its PG line with a very interesting kit, the PG Astray Red Frame. The reason I say this is interesting is because this is a suit that really was only seen in the mangas. It continues to be the only manga-based suit to receive a perfect grade. But the popularity in both the Astray and its pilot, Low Guel, gave Bandai the confidence to release this as the newest PG, and it did not disappoint. 36 runners, 3 die-cast parts, 2 massive decal sheets, and 3 different booklets. This kit was a massive project to undertake and certainly gave customers a bang for their buck. I mean, just ask Nick, who needed over 16 hours to finish it for our charity live stream for Shriners.
So whoever wanted to see this, I don't know if there's enough camera to hold this whole build all in at once. There's so much to it here.
It featured superb double-jointed articulation in the arms and legs, fantastic accessories including 2 beam sabers, 2 miniature switchblades, a display for your katanas, and a 1/60th low figure, and a final build that stands at roughly 13 inches tall. After the release of the Astray, Bandai would continue to release PGs in smaller batches. They would pair the Astray with the release of the 00 Riser a couple months later. The 00 featured a locking joint mechanism that allowed builders to lock their PG into a pose so that the joints could bear the weight of the additional weaponry included with the kit. A year later, the Strike Freedom was released. This was actually the first PG that was designed by Hajime Katoki, the famed mecha designer responsible for the Verka series, and he did not disappoint, as the Strike Freedom is still the largest PG kit when you account for its absolutely absurd wingspan. Another 4 years would pass until the next unveiling of the Unicorn Gundam in late 2014. This PG was fully transformable from Unicorn to Destroy mode and featured a kit exclusive of the Destroyed mode Unchained. This PG actually uses magnets in the V-fin to keep them closed while in Unicorn mode, but easy enough to open up for the Destroy mode. A few months later, they would release the Banshee Norn, which is just a recolor of the Unicorn. Fast forward 2 years later to the next release, and we get to see the PG Exia. Now, this PG had the same gimmicks as the rest of the PGs before it. Immense detail down to the working pistons, tons of hatches to open, and possibilities, and blah blah blah. But what this kit had that others did not was its own separate lighting system. The LED unit for the Exia solved a common problem in most PGs, which is that the LED units that came with the kit were never really powerful enough to really light up the kit. I found forum after forum describing how the LED unit that comes with the PGs aren't powerful enough to light the kit, or just trying to get them out to replace the battery is such a hassle and just not really worth it. This is even true for the guys in the warehouse. Notice how none of them had their lighting on? Well, that's because they all agreed that the low light given off wasn't worth the hassle of opening up the head and changing the battery inside of the tiny LED. That changed with the lighting kit for the Exia. This brought a new, beautiful lighting that really encapsulated what a Gundam would look like in our world. Beautiful breathing lights that can shift from blue to red that also do not hinder the kit's posability. The LED for the GN drives and the eyes can also be activated separately. The Exia was released to commemorate both the 10th anniversary of MSG00 as well as the 20th anniversary for the Perfect Grade line, and the engineers clearly went all out for this kit. The Exia wasn't the only PG released that year, as Bandai decided to release just the second non-Gundam PG with the release of the only ship to do the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs, the Millennium Falcon. 35 sprues of pure Star Wars goodness. This PG was actually based off of the original 5-foot model that was used in detail shots for the original Star Wars film, meaning this is the most accurate recreation of the Falcon on the market, which makes you understand the $400 price point a little better. But if you ask me, little Chewbacca is worth that price alone. That leads me to the last of the regular PG releases with the 2020 debut of the Perfect Strike Gundam. This was a piggybacking and retelling of the Strike Gundam that was released 16 years prior, but with significant improvements. The PG Perfect Strike features brand new head and armor parts that offer a much more detailed counterpart to the Strike. It also improved on a lot of the improper proportions that a lot of the earlier PG kits struggled with. It also added silver-plated pieces to enhance its metallic look. However, the biggest improvement I found was that there were major improvements to the knees. What was a giant gap before was now filled with internal mechanisms. Overall, this was a very welcomed addition to the PG line, and the first of what I assume to be many reimaginings of prior PGs. With the technological advancements that have been made since 05, I could see Bandai trying to build on kits such as the Mark II, the Zeta, and even, hopefully, the Zaku. So I know what you're thinking. That's not all the PGs. And you would be right. While I have gone through all of the regular PG releases, there is one very special kit that I haven't mentioned yet. The PG Unleashed. A kit so beautiful in its engineering that it almost brought ILM alum Adam Savage to tears.
This business. Is this really the end after all this beautiful work? I'm actually sad. They've made the build experience so pleasurable.
This kit takes what the Perfect Strike did to the Strike and turns it up to 11. Firstly, it improved upon the articulation with the implementation of the advanced MS joints that we see in recent reel grades. The kit also features an array of both metallic and chrome-plated pieces, as well as metallic parts and etching stickers. This kit also implements magnet-mounted weaponry, such as the beam rifle and shield, so no more flimsy weapons falling out of hands. Beam sabers that can either light up individually or simultaneously light up the backpack when stored, as well as both an Amuro and Sayla Mass figure. This clearly is the most advanced Gunpla kit ever released, but why is it considered an Unleashed as opposed to a regular PG? Well, that is down to the revolutionary Gunpla Evolution Link system, which, according to Bandai, is a step-by-step assembly process offering a simulation of the assembly of an actual Gundam. Essentially, you have to build this thing the way a factory in the real world would have to. Start with the internal frame, then add on the mechanical parts, add the stabilizing truss framework, slap on some of the exterior armor, and then fill up the effects with missile pods and hatches, as this kit has a total of 53 different sections with hatch opening gimmicks, which, if you were wondering, yes, is the most opening hatches in the history of Gunpla. This kit gives you the truest Gunpla building satisfaction that you could achieve and has everything that a Gunpla builder could ever ask for. Except for batteries. You still have to ask for batteries. So that is a brief history of Bandai's Perfect Grade line, from its inception of its Ava model and the humble beginnings of the RX-78 to the groundbreaking PG Unleashed that is so magnificent that it has broken into the zeitgeist of popular media. Over the last 26 years, there have been some amazing improvements, and with the most recent release coming in 2020, the newest release could be just around the corner. Let me know down in the comments what mobile suit you want to see get its own Perfect Grade, and while you're down there, consider hitting the like button and maybe even subscribing. We have loads more planned on this channel for 2024, and you don't want to miss it.